today we're talking running backs, Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. Hello, and thank you for joining us here on our Countdown to Camp series. I'm Phil Milani, alongside Sidney Jones and Eric Dalala. Guys, our question today is pretty simple. Who will have more carries in 2020, Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay? Sidney, let's start with you.
Hey, Phil. Yeah, well, Pat Shurmur and Vic Fangio, they put a lot of emphasis on saying that the Broncos are planning to utilize both Melvin and Phillip and that they're going to share the running back duties. But obviously, one guy's going to have more carries than the other. And for me, my opinion, that's going to be Melvin Gordon, simply because I think he brings more to the table. He's bigger than Lindsay, but, still very elusive for his size. And I think he's going to be more helpful in more situations. I mean, for example, let's say you're on the goal line and you need 1 yard for the touchdown. Who are you handing the ball off to? The guy that's 6'1", 210, or the guy that's 5'8", 190? I think I'm going to go with Melvin there.
That's a very good point. It does seem like Melvin Gordon has a nose for the end zone, really good in short yardage situations. The most carries that Melvin Gordon has had in his career, 284 in 2017, but we've seen his production decline over the last 2 years in terms of carries and yards. Eric, what do you say?
I think it'll be closer than people think, Phil. I think there's this expectation that Melvin Gordon's going to have, 20 touches, 25 touches a game, and Phillip Lindsay is going to be in that 5 to 10 area. I think it's going to be closer than that. If you look at the Chargers a few years ago, when Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon were really playing well and complementing each other, it was pretty close to a 50-50 split. Now, I agree with what Sidney said, that down by the goal line, maybe Melvin Gordon gets it a little bit more. He's the only running back in the league with 8 touchdowns in each of the last 4 seasons. So, like you mentioned, Phil knows how to score touchdowns. But I do think it could actually help Phillip Lindsay and make him more productive to have fewer carries. As a rookie, he had more plays of 25-plus yards, was more explosive. And if they can get it back to maybe a 60-40 split for Gordon compared to Lindsay, I think you'll actually see better football out of each of them. Gordon just has to stay healthy.
Lindsay had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, but it's hard to tell who's going to get more carries here, because we heard Pat Shurmur say, hey, you got to have 2 running backs in this league. It's a long season. He said something almost identical to that when he was offensive coordinator in Philadelphia in 2013. And then later that season, LaShawn McCoy had 314 carries, more than 1,600 yards, and was an all-pro. Meanwhile, the other running back there, Bryce Brown, only saw the ball 75 times. So when I talked to Phillip Lindsay maybe a couple of weeks ago, he said, hey, I'm not just going to give this job up. So it's definitely going to be something to watch, right, Sidney, in the camp?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I agree with what Eric said. I think it's going to be probably 60-40 with Melvin, obviously 60, Lindsay 40. But I think Lindsay is way too good not to give the ball to. I mean, he's certainly proved himself the past 2 seasons. So I think that he's going to get more carries than people might think.
And Lindsay has this chip on his shoulder. He sort of carries himself away, walks around a certain way, an undrafted type mentality. Eric, what does he need to do to make sure he keeps getting carries?
Well, it's not just about carries, Phil. It's about touches in general. And I think if he can improve catching the ball out of the backfield, which has been kind of a weakness the last couple of years, even though he was good at it at Colorado, if he can do that in Pat Shurmur's offense, he's going to see the field a lot more. And that's where maybe you could see him overtake Gordon by late in the season. And again, not to harp on injuries, but Phillip Lindsay has been productive and he's been available. And so, maybe there's a point late in the season where Phillip Lindsay overtakes Melvin Gordon if he's able to keep that explosiveness and start to be a little more productive out of the backfield in the passing game.
Another reason why Phillip Lindsay might have a chip on his shoulder, I think he was expecting to get a new contract this offseason, or at least more of a conversation there. We heard John Elway say he talked to Phillip's agent. That was back on March 31st, but obviously nothing materialized there. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll continue our countdown tomorrow by taking a look at the Broncos secondary. Until then, for Sidney Jones and Eric Dalala, I'm Phil Milani.